Hi everyone, Carol here from NOSH, reporting from Expo West. We're going to chat with Will Lisman, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of HumanCo. Will, thanks so much for taking some time to chat with me. I know it's been a crazy couple of days, very popular booth.
No, thanks for having me, Carol. It's great to reconnect. We've had lots of fans coming through, sampling our pizza bites, and ice cream over the last couple of days, but it's just great to be back at Expo and back in the industry.
Who doesn't love pizza and ice cream? I mean, that's a winning combination.
Yes. We have some great products that we're very proud of and happy to help keep everybody well fed and nourished as they're walking the halls.
So to get started, can you tell me a little bit about what HumanCo is?
Sure. HumanCo is a mission-driven holding company for health and wellness brands. And we are guided by our mission to help human beings and ultimately consumers live healthier lives and do so in a more sustainable way. And we are building a portfolio of brands that meet our very strict product guardrails across ultimately food, beverage, and personal care. We're focused on food right now, and specifically frozen foods, and we have 3 brands in the portfolio with Coconut Bliss, Against the Grain, and Snow Days.
Well, Against the Grain was your latest acquisition. How has the integration of that brand been going?
Sure. It's been about 6 months since we acquired Against the Grain, and so far things have gone incredibly well. We hired a new president, Mike Watts, who joined us from Grillo's. Mike's in the Boston area and is spending a lot of time in Vermont, where Against the Grain is based. We've been very focused on making investments in manufacturing and supply chain. As we get ready to really accelerate the growth on the business, we want to make sure that we have capacity in place. And so Mike's been leading a lot of those efforts, and we have some big news coming in the back half of the year in terms of new customer partnerships and new innovation that we're commercializing and getting ready to bring to market.
Well, speaking about pizza and new customer relationships, Snow Days, your pizza bite brand, initially began as a direct-to-consumer play, and it just recently started entering retail. Tell me a little bit about how you knew the brand was ready to enter retail and what you kind of needed to do to prepare for that shift.
Sure. So Snow Days is, I think, officially now a year old. It just had its first birthday. We intentionally launched the business online through D2C, and the concept was really around leveraging D2C as a way to test and learn and ultimately optimize the proposition before we launched into retail. We knew ultimately retail was going to be a big part of the business in the future, but leaned into our D2C channel and ultimately the ability to iterate and get some initial learnings before we launched into retail. I would say we knew late summer that we were onto something. The product feedback from the beginning was super, super positive, but it took us a couple months to kind of find our footing in terms of the marketing model and ultimately the communication strategy around the brand. And we really started to hit our stride in the fall and began to scale up and started to have some conversations with customers, many of which were proactively reaching out to us because they had seen Snow Days online. So we had some deep conversations, and we formally launched into retail back in January with Sprouts, and are continuing to build out our distribution footprint in a very selective way. Snow Days is currently available at Sprouts, Foxtrot, and on GoPuff. We'll be launching in Erewhon this month and bringing on additional retail partners as the year progresses.
You alluded to this a little bit, but what was one of those learnings that emerged as you were testing in D2C that maybe surprised you?
Sure. I mean, anytime you launch a new brand, you come into it with a hypothesis around who your target consumer is going to be. Once the product's in market, often you get the learnings around who's actually consuming and buying the brand. And for us, there was a belief that this brand, and specifically this product, had potential to be a family favorite, but really ultimately be a product that not only small kids in the household could consume, but mom and dad could as well. I think what we've learned, or one of the key learnings, has been how popular is this product is with the adults in the household. It's continuous, the feedback that comes through, that while the product's often bought for the small kids in the household, ultimately it's dad that finds himself throwing a bag of Snow Days into the air fryer on a Saturday. Ultimately, the learnings there have been, I would say, incremental to what we thought before, but definitely helped us home the story and the positioning as we got ready for the retail launch.
Speaking of evolution, 2 of your brands that we've kind of talked about, Against the Grain and Coconut Bliss, formerly Coconut Bliss, they are brands with rich histories and a lot of consumer enthusiasm for them. When you bring them into this portfolio of brands, I'm sure you see a path forward with them. So how do you kind of respect that history and keep that going in the minds of shoppers and buyers, but also kind of help it evolve and get to that next stage of growth?
Sure. So we think ultimately of HumanCo like a family. And much like a family, there's a common set of values that all the brands share, but ultimately each brand is unique and independent and has its own history. And once we're making an acquisition and bringing a new business into the portfolio that has a history like an Against the Grain or like a Coconut Bliss, it's really important to us to strike the right balance in terms of embracing and celebrating the founder story and the authenticity and identifying what the key elements are of the brand that we want to continue to carry forward with, but then also identify where there's opportunity to modernize and sharpen the marketing and ultimately the branding. We feel like we've been able to do that now with Cosmic Bliss, which has evolved from Coconut Bliss. And that word evolution, I think, is an appropriate way to think about it, is we're not looking to make dramatic changes, but rather evolve on a really strong foundation and make sure that the brand is still modern and relevant for today's consumer. And we're going through some of that work now with Against the Grain as we begin to put more investment behind marketing, which was historically not a big focus for the business. It's important to really pull the legacy of the brand forward, but also modernize and sharpen it in a way that it can break through in an increasingly crowded shelf and ultimately, in our case, a frozen freezer door.
Well, thanks so much for sharing a little bit about HumanCo and your portfolio brands. It was really lovely to catch up today. And for those of you watching from home or your office, stay tuned for more Expo West coverage on NOSH.com.